So next session is about our values. It's hosted by the Honorable Suze, so welcome up, Suze. And I'll also invite Janine Manning, Nelson Wong, Jack McGuire, and Sharon Bryan to the stage. Come on up.
And just to start with my little pepeha, I'm too whakamā to do it in the reo. I respect the reo too much and my pronunciation is still not groovy enough. But my mountain is Aoraki, Mount Cook, down in the South Island, and my river is the Opihi. I grew up in South Canterbury. My family is Reynolds, and you know me, I'm Suze. My tribe and my affiliation to that effect is Ngāi Tahu. And my waka, which is another aspect of a pepeha, I was one of the first 4 ships into Canterbury, the Randolph. So that's very much, I grew up on a farm in South Canterbury, and it was that, growing up in South Canterbury, that inspired me to be where I am here actually today. The passion I have for New Zealanders and what New Zealand can achieve, and Sean embodied that, is really strong. I do believe New Zealanders and we can all make such a huge difference doing what we're doing. I know we all do bring our own value sets. This is, to use one of my technical terms, this is a slightly nanga topic. I appreciate that for this audience. You know, we still love to kind of dig into the things that are tangible and we can grapple with, especially in our world. When we do due diligence, we're still far too inclined to focus on the financials or the market or the legals. But we all acknowledge when we get up and talk about what's most important is that it's the people. And yet we don't talk enough, I don't think, about the role of diversity, the role of us as people, and acknowledge what is our values. Our values are actually a really important part of delivering value. We have, we've started and we decided kind of bravely to make this the theme of this summit about diversity and how it delivers outcomes, makes a difference. But I wanted us to be really staunch about digging into this, not about how many women, and I slightly sort of graphically refer to it. It's not about whether or not you have boobs, brown skin, beautiful almond eyes, or are practically a bubs. That's not what it's about. It's about the values that you bring to this. It's about being a woman and being a person of colour or being a millennial. What is your value set? What are the approaches that you bring to this space? What questions do you ask? And that's the other thing I think about being here in the next day and a half. We all know why we're here. We want to grow great companies. It's the what and the how that I want us to be really aware of. And diversity, Harry Belafonte had a really neat, when I was reading a book the other day about, inspirational, amazing people, a person of colour who made such a difference to the world. And he encouraged us to discover the joy in diversity, to be open to the unusual, to the strange, to the radical, and to the other. Because he believes that if we're open to that, we bring great nourishment to us as a species. He sees real joy and development and diversity. And I tell you what, this space is all about the radical. Sean, there's not many people that are much more radical than you. We are all about radical products, radical services, and radical founders. But also, you guys are all pretty radical too, doing what you're doing. It's a pretty unique kind of space. And I guess, one of the things sort of in prepping for this, we have our code of conduct. It's going to come up on the screen here. There are a whole bunch of ways. We all talk about values and behaviours and aspirations, but actually still what's at the nub of that is the approach that we bring to this kind of stuff. What are the questions we ask? How do we ask them? Why do we ask them? Why are we asking those things to get the value out of this space? For me, in prepping for this, the values that are really important to me are kindness, courage, and respect. The kindness actually is not just about being kind to each other, although that's important. It's being kind to ourselves. And actually, in sort of learning a little bit more about self-compassion, I used to think it was all, I was a bit nervous about that because that meant you just sat on a couch and ate chocolate biscuits. In fact, it's not. It's about being kind to yourself when you're going to be brave, and giving yourself the kind of sort of jargon alert, but the permission to go hard, to be brave. If we're kind and courageous, we give ourselves a whole bunch more zhuzh at being able to do that. And for me, respect is actually about being compassionately curious about people's different points of view. So in digging into this, we have got a pretty diverse panel up here. The only thing I was conscious of is we don't have a control. There's no ordinary bloke up here. So sorry about that. And so what I wanted to do in digging into this, I wanted to just, acknowledging that we all have a different value set, and I wanted us to kind of just go down this panel and talk about the extent there are perceptions about the sort of different value sets we have. I wanted you to talk about your own value sets and also talk really specifically about how you have applied that value set to what you do in this space and where you've seen it make a difference. Nelson, if we can start with you. What's the value set that you bring to this space? What are the things that are important to you in doing this?
Okay, as a migrant, I think I moved from Taiwan about 25 years ago, and I've been thinking about this topic about diversity. Being as a migrant coming to a new country with my parents, it's kind of, it's born in us, and it's kind of force ourselves to learn new things, to try and understand the new language, the new culture, and look at things in a different lens. And depends on which angle you look at, some people may look at it as a disadvantage, coming to a new place without knowing anyone, without any kind of resource to back you up. But if you turn it around, it can be an advantage. I mean, certainly in my case, it gives myself, it kind of forced me to be a lot more open-minded, to have some sort of global mindset, because coming from another country, moving here, it's kind of part of who I am. And by using that, I'll be able to identify some of the things I see as an opportunities that potentially can help and encourage to make it happen offshore. So that principle and value has always been my approach in life in general and in business as well. I think very much encouraging people to find out how am I different, so I can understand a lot more about New Zealand than a lot of the new migrants. But at the same time, I haven't lose that connection back home and resources back home. And how do we encourage and celebrate that to make it happen?
And one of the things that Nelson's sort of been part of the lead for is the establishment of Xeno Ventures, which is trying to build greater connectivity and help Kiwi founders or migrant founders expand into Asia. And for me, that was one of my proudest moments in being involved in this space, is because fundamentally I do this thing because I believe that the more we trade together, the less likely we are to kill each other. That's my really deep why in this space. I was a diplomat in a prior life. So I'm super pleased about that, because that's really helping us to understand each other and bring value to each other. So thanks, Nelson. Terrific. Cool. Sharon.
Morena. I really just wanted to put some context around why I'm up here today, because I was a founding partner of Movac, but I stepped down as a director a number of years ago, even though I'm still a significant investor. So I've got a portfolio of investments that are quite diverse, and obviously through engaging with a number of angel groups and also doing things individually, and still hanging with the Movac partners. So we do a number of things that are early stage that don't reflect where Movac is basically positioned at the moment. So basically I'm talking personally, even though I think I've got Movac behind my name, although I'm still part of the Movac family. So I think for me, there's a number of core value sets that have been really integral to, I guess, everything I do personally from a family perspective and also from a business. So there's absolutely no difference there. And they've come from a number of things. So if I just quickly go through them, the first is around basically doing the right thing. So it's about integrity, which is absolutely very, very important to me, and honesty, openness, and a number of other values that sort of belong aside from that as well. Also around having a strong work ethic, and I think this was sort of born into me from when I was growing up. I certainly was, I really struggled at school, so I really had to develop sort of diligence and determination to succeed, to go from bottom of the class to top of the school. Around that as well. I think the other sort of work ethic, or the other value set, is around embracing individuality. So it's really, really important that that we basically look at how we operate as individuals and how we operate as a team. So there's a number of values that are around that as well. I'm just going to refer to some notes here. If I can find them. I think the other sort of value set is around being curious. So it's never say never, and I think that was born in terms of the kind of generation that I grew up in, where I was kind of pushed into very stereotyped administration, shorthand typing roles, and I really had to really work hard to go and further my education and not accept those jobs, and basically that's how I guess a shorthand typist turned into be a computer geek in those early days. The last thing is just around making a positive difference in this world, and I think that's sort of been inherent ever since I was little, and I don't know where that sort of came from. Maybe I was born well before my age, and I'm more aligned with the millennials in terms of having that strong sense of making a difference and giving and generosity from that perspective. And the last thing is just around being an exceptional human being, which basically humility is number one there for me. And it was wonderful to hear Sean speak. He's obviously doing absolutely amazing things, but does that with such humbleness, and that's something that I really admire in other people, and has come from my sort of upbringing as well.
And I think I'd just like to acknowledge too, MOVAC have been such a force in building our ecosystem and the angel space. When we founded Angel HQ about 8 or 10 years ago, they were so supportive of us doing that. They could so have seen what we were doing as competition. But the value set that they have led with in terms of inclusiveness and supporting each other to do this is really terrific. So you embody that big time. Thank you, Sharon. That's terrific. Janine.
Okay, I think I must have grown up in the same kind of era as Sharon, because I would say, coming from a farming family, all boys sort of, I don't think we ever called it values back then. It was just the way that it was. So you grew up, you worked hard, you played fair, and you sort of learnt to be independent. I think also in that era, definitely sort of in the rural sector of New Zealand, boys were still considered to be more important than girls. And being the only girl in the family, that was probably my inspiration to sort of tell them all to go and get stuffed, really, and go and do my own thing. So I won't sort of say all of the same things you said, humility, integrity, all those things, because I think they're a given. But I'll just talk a little bit, about the diversity that we have at Crimson, because, that's been an eye-opener for me 4 years ago when we started. And I sort of look at our makeup of our workforce, and really most workplaces, the bulk of the employees come between the 25 and 40-year-old age group. Well, I'd say that's where the least number of our employees sit. So we do have a few older ones like me. I like to call myself a 50-something millennial, but definitely the bulk of our workforce are under 25, and that, we've got slightly older over the last 4 years, but that really is, I can see that my children's generation are completely different than my parents' generation. And so I sort of look to the young people for guidance about the way that we should view the world. And, it was a little bit alarming for me at first to sort of go into the Crimson office, and it was a little bit like the United Nations. And, you sort of look around, there's all these different cultures and different people with different sexual preferences, and it's just not an issue. And so it's something that's never been conscious. It's never been conscious that we only, we employ as many women as men, which we do. But for me, it's about being open-minded to change. So when Sean sort of spoke about, what's happening with the world and how we have to innovate, I think our workplaces need to innovate as well. So if we can sort of look, to the younger generation to guide us into the future. I think that's the way we need to head with our values.
And so to the young person.
I sort of feel a little bit funny being up here because yes, I am young, but in pretty much every other way, I look much like everyone else in this room. So I don't know how representative I actually am.
Don't think there's anyone else younger in the room than you actually. Sorry about that. Oh, Chandra, you might be.
But beyond that, I guess I share a lot of the same values as everyone else here and elsewise on the panel. I love what we get to do here because it is an environment of trust and integrity and respect between entrepreneurs and investors and everyone else that interacts in this community. Depends which media source you'll read, whether it's a positive thing or a negative thing. But I guess from the younger perspective, I think that some will say it's millennials are entitled and they want everything at once, but I think it's just I don't want to wait till I'm successful to then do the things that come with success. I don't want to wait until I'm successful to give back to other people or to have flexibility. It's why can't we do it all at the same time? And I think that is sort of what entrepreneurship is about. It's breaking the rules and why I see something as linear or this is the steps to do something. The other thing, I think Randy said it yesterday, is there are easier ways to make money than starting a startup or investing in startups. And so with that lens, everything that we're doing in this room and in this community has to be about meaning, because if it was just about money, and I'm not saying it, I also disagree with the people that stand up on stage and call it philanthropy and say I treat it as a donation. It is an investment, but it has to have meaning attached to it as well. Those are probably the bigger things that stand out.
Yeah. I'd really love to dig in a little deeper and Wendy Wolfson's going to run a session a little bit later in the conference to really explore how diversity delivers better outcomes and large. This session is primarily focused on sort of value sets and which ones are important to us. But I'd love for you guys to kind of, whoever wants to kind of respond to this first, but you know, we still have this kind of hypersensitivity to a male-dominated, environment. So I would love, and particularly a Western-dominated environment. Nelson, I'd like to explore a little bit more with you about how you have any challenges that you've faced in bringing a more Eastern kind of philosophy to what you're doing with Xeno Ventures, but also just in general, and how you've maybe gone about inserting those values or making people aware of the importance of taking a different approach, of having a different value set.
Sure. For me, I love challenges and difficulties, because every time I see challenges, I see opportunities. If there's a perception about certain things, there's a way people generally believe certain things before they look beyond that. I get excited, because that's where I see, hey, there's opportunity there. There's a chance for me to tap into it, to explore, to bring the awareness up, and potentially, new value can be created. That's what I love about it. There's always going to be challenges, but I think it's lack of understanding.
And where do you see the biggest clashes from a sort of like an Eastern, if you can call it that, value set, and a more Western value set? Particularly in our context. Sure.
I think from the cultural perspective, we're very much a long-term belief, driving the long-term value, whether it's making friends, building trust, building relationships. I just love what Sean did, back in 2010, he has so much scorpion and so much exciting food. That's a typical example of being open-minded, not afraid to try new things, but that's how a relationship is built. I'm not sure I'm brave enough to try those scorpions now, and things have changed. But in terms of building relationship, it does take time, right? And you just keep trying. For me, a lot of the time, it's lack of understanding. That's all. Yeah. And you just need time to build it, and it's not a short-term thing. Just like investments, you have to keep driving, keep believing that value, and just keep pushing it, and be persistent. That's my belief. So if you, some of you may have experience doing business in China. A lot of time I think trust is mutual. We need to understand them to have trust, and it's vice versa. And a lot of the time, a handshake or a pre-order or contract initially may be just giving favors, so don't take things for granted. A lot of time they need to see we show the commitments, and just like what we're doing, for Zeno Ventures in New Zealand, it's a long-term thing. We're not just passive deploy capital and go. It's a long-term. It's driving what we believe can help, and actively keep pushing, keep trying, and generally over a period of time, people will see, these guys means business. It's just like any other business. It's how trust is built.
Nice.
Yeah.
Sharon and Janine, I'd like to kind of explore with you, and really kind of digging into the value aspect of it, but working in what is sort of still seen as such a male-dominated kind of space, and how any experience or examples that you can bring of how you've kind of challenged or been confronted, or maybe not challenged but actually sucked up sort of more typical male values and I just want to really accentuate, we have this thing about male values being negative, and I don't want to sort of like diss on that, because there are a lot of, and I do think in this room there are more feminine values imbued in the blokes in this room by dint of what you're doing. You have to care more than maybe is given the perception about a really hard-ass commercial black and white kind of space. But I would nevertheless like to explore with Sharon and Janine any examples of where you have kind of confronted those more sort of classic negative perceptions of male values, and they are good male values as well, just to amp up that again, and how you've dealt with that.
Shall I go first? Sure. I think I've never sort of been out there, feminist and sort of spouting it off. So I would say that I like to go down the tempered radical type of route, which is an excellent book if anyone hasn't read it. So it's about making change without rocking the boat. So I think the best way we can make change is just to lead by example, and then to support people. It's just thinking about it. I work with 7 founders at the moment, and 5 of them are women. But that wasn't a conscious decision that I was going out and saying I'm not going to invest in companies run by blokes. And so I don't, on the other hand, I don't agree with quotas, because I never want to be chosen for something because I'm filling a seat because of my gender. So I would rather be invited to the table because I'm going to add some value. So I think the way, as women I think they have great networks that support. So like in London, we have the New Zealand Business Women's Network, and they do a great job of sort of, I suppose, giving you guidance and direction on how you can deal with those things. But in my whole career, I've actually never really come across anything that I've thought is unfair because I'm a woman.
And Sharon?
Yeah, very much the same experiences actually. I think when we, and I'm the same, I don't want to be involved in governance or any role specifically because I took the gender box. It's very much about, to me, talent is obviously about the skills and the experiences, whether they be personal and work, your knowledge, and your skill, and your value set and what you actually bring to that, and that can come from your upbringing, as we've sort of talked about, and various other things. I don't think I've had any example of that I can relate to in terms of where I've had to really be quite forceful, which isn't part of my nature anyway, in terms of bringing that perspective. Obviously, I'm the only female in the Movac family in terms of partners. It meant that I got my own bathroom when we went to offsites, but that's pretty much the only perk in terms of that. And I think when we sort of established Movac, because it was a flat structure and there was a number of partners, we really had to work hard to make sure that there was really great alignment in terms of our values, and that really bore out in the culture, and that led to the foundation in terms of the businesses that we started, particularly in those early days. And it's great that they've sort of stood the test of time. I think we've just celebrated, 20 years of being a business and 32 ventures later. And, I remember going to our first sort of off-sites, and, I think our catch cry, we'd sing, we'd play with really loud music. I get knocked down, I get back up again. I think there was a lot of, support and balance in terms of what we were trying to do, but no specific examples. And again, I choose based on my value set and an investment criteria, as opposed to particularly looking for female founders. That's, yeah.
And Jack, I just want to, representing the millennial thing again, in this world and what we're doing, how do we as angels make sure that we have a better understanding, and have you felt the need to kind of explain how a millennial approaches something, or to help people who have a different kind of value set, different approach?
Yeah, I think the good thing is that the people here are switched on, and they're aware of it, and they are aware that they need to understand the next generation generally, or at least try, because it is the next generation of customers or talent or founders. The really difficult thing is that it gets lumped as millennial values, and I think the principle of diversity is that I can't see a single value set. If I look at my peers and my friends outside of the investing scene, I can't group them into having the same perspectives at all, and I think that's probably pretty challenging for investors.
I think that's a really good point, because I think that is something that, it's the sort of openness and curiosity that's really important, that we understand that when we're trying to add value, it is about, exploring different ideas and different approaches to things. I wonder, Jack, if you could kind of if we can get more granular now and look at when we're doing deals, is there, and you've been lucky enough to, be on the wing and deeply embedded with Ice Angels now for sort of 3 or 4 years, and watching various people do due diligence and deals getting done, are there specific values that you've seen brought to that you feel are more impactful, make a bigger difference, are more inclined to lead to better outcomes than others?
Well, the big thing, I think, is probably the people that approach it collaboratively. Of due diligence is how do we and the entrepreneurs find and agree on the best plan, as opposed to how do I pick holes in this entrepreneur's plan.
Janine, do you want to talk a little bit about that? When you're doing deals, getting embedded into deals, what are the values that it is more of a subconscious thing, I think, but still it's important to kind of understand what have you found to be more effective in watching others maybe do deals as well.
I think, Randy summed it up yesterday when he said it is a people business, and I think you don't always know everything about somebody before you invest in them. And I haven't sort of done any due diligence on deals. I'm on 2 boards in the UK, and I've gone on to Fuel 50's board recently, and obviously the due diligence had all been done there, and they were sort of performing on results, so we could look at it. So any deal we do, I think you do have to look at the people quite carefully, and you sort of pretty much know whether you're on the same wavelength, but you don't always get it right.
Yeah, that's terrific. We're coming up to nearly morning tea time, so I think just in summarising, I think one of the key things that we need to remember is to check your unconscious biases. You guys have all reflected a real kind of openness and a curiosity. We all have that in the room, I think, but it's great to see a more increasing diversity in the room already. But the whole sort of point of, as we go through the rest of the summit, we have a session tomorrow, 2 sessions tomorrow, which dig into the Asian thing a bit more, but I would really love for us to have more Māori engagement in this space. There's one of my most, I guess, inspiring parts of last year was being a judge on the Māori High Tech Awards, and just understanding, Nelson, you referred to it too, the sort of deeper, longer perspective, the deeper sense of purpose and meaning about why we're doing this, and the sort of the araha, the love, that's a really important part of a Māori approach to doing business. So we'll dig into that some more tomorrow as well with Guy Royal from Tuia Investments. But just encourage you to keep thinking really expansively and creatively, because actually the nub of this is when it gets really gritty and when it gets hard, that's when your value set comes to the fore the most. So just keeping those values of courage and kindness and respect, I think those are the key ones for us as a hood. So thank you very much.
you.